Senate sets legislative agenda for the next 4 years. I'm Linda Akibe, and you're welcome to the gavel. The Senate resumed this week after an 8-week recess. On resumption, the upper chamber presented its agenda for the next 4 years. The agenda intends to reposition the Senate to carry out its duties of legislation, oversight and representation to achieve sustainable economic growth and development. In the agenda, the Senate resolves to adopt a transparent and accountable system that offers full disclosure of its budget in terms of personnel costs, operational expenses, and other expenditures.
As we enter the 9th Senate, more of oversight. And you still, when you talk about oversight, the legislature should know that it is independent.
They should make 21st century laws.
Have an independent parliament that will checkmate the excesses of the government.
Parliamentary reporters speaking to Channels Television on what they expect from the 9th Senate. A lot rests on the 9th National Assembly to provide leadership, effective oversight and people-centered legislation. This may be the reason why the Senate is setting a legislative agenda for the next 4 years. The agenda is presented during Thursday's plenary, and it is coming at a time when the nation is experiencing an underperforming economy, security challenges, and a dissatisfied citizenry. Key aspects of the agenda include review of its Standing Rules 2015 to continue legislative business of the Senate, which remains undetermined at the close of a session or life of the Senate. Anti-corruption legislation to ensure quick dispensation of justice in corruption-related cases, effective and well-planned oversight of government MDAs to expose corruption and inefficiency, constitution amendment, electoral reform, strengthen legislation to protect women from violence and all forms of abuse. Lawmakers spent the entire day debating how to use this agenda to fight corruption, create employment, and secure the lives of Nigerians.
If we do not achieve local government financial autonomy, Mr. President, the issue of poverty, the issue of security, the issue of all the issues we are raising today will not be curbed.
I would like to recommend that we should start that sectoral reform and intervention beginning with the agricultural sector intervention, which will be focusing on national food security as a key priority.
We cannot be having 30% recurrent capital expenditure, 30% capital and 70% recurrent. It's not going to work, and that is why nothing is going on.
In the 8th Assembly, we try to bring out the number that Nigeria is from 164 to 140 today. And we must try to further bring it down, because whatever we do, if we do not look at areas that we are going to improve of doing business in Nigeria, we are going to lose a lot. Many businesses are moving to Ghana, they are moving to Togo, they are moving to Benin, they are moving to other countries of West Africa. All is because the ease of doing business is not, are taken seriously in this country.
Let me emphasize first on the need for capacity building. This cannot be overemphasized. In the 3 aspects that need to be specifically attended to: building the capacity of elected legislators, building the capacity of those who constitute the bureaucracy of the National Assembly, and of course, building the capacity of those young men and women that elected legislators always bring with them to the National Assembly as legislative aides. Whatever it would take, I would emphasize that this is an area that is very critical and that requires all the attention. And part of what I will suggest is that the leadership of the National Assembly, under your chairmanship, Mr. President, will also look beyond what the National Assembly itself can afford to invest in building the capacity of the legislators and the bureaucracy and their legislative aides to see to the possibility of also working with relevant development partners and especially civil society organizations to see the extent to which we can also leverage on what they are willing to contribute in that capacity, in that regard.
Most of the parastatals we have in science and technology are actually task force centers addressing different aspects of the economy. If we are talking of food security, the agency in biotechnology can contribute a lot to the issue of food security. And if you are talking of physical security, Mr. President, I'm happy you are a remote sensing expert. You know the role that remote sensing can contribute not only to infrastructural development, but the security of a nation. We have a center or an agency that has the capacity to produce drones, and we all know the role that drones are playing now in national security and intelligence gathering.
We are here to make a very positive difference in the lives of Nigerians. We want to make our country better.
The Senate plans to set up a committee which will periodically remind it of its commitments as a way to ensure that it complies with its legislative agenda. Now, during the week, President Buhari sent the Medium-Term Expenditure Framework (MTEF) to the Senate and House of Representatives for consideration. And the Senate has transferred the MTEF and FSP to its Committee on Finance. The committee is chaired by Senator Solomon Adiola, and he was given 1 week to come up with the report.
The Medium-Term Expenditure Framework (MTEF) and Fiscal Strategy Paper (FSP) is now in the hands of the National Assembly. The planning documents came with a covering letter addressed to the Senate President and Speaker of the House of Representatives.
Given our shared objective of returning the budget a predictable January-December fiscal year with effect from 2020, I hereby forward the 2020/2022 MTEF FSP to the distinguished Senate and trust that it will be expeditiously considered in order to facilitate the 2020 FGM budget preparation process.
But once again, the President is sending the MTEF and FSP late to the National Assembly in breach of the Fiscal Responsibility Act. Section 11 of the Act states that the federal government, after consultation with the states, shall no later than 6 months from the commencement of the Act cause to be prepared and laid before the National Assembly for their consideration the Medium-Term Expenditure Framework and Fiscal Strategy Paper. Despite this delay, the Senate President has repeatedly said the National Assembly will pass the 2020 budget by December 2019, a feat which has been near impossible in previous assemblies. In the MTEF document, the federal government's expenditure budget is estimated at 9.12 trillion naira, which is slightly higher than the 2019 budget of 8.92 trillion naira. Interest payment on debt is estimated at 2.45 trillion naira, while provisions for personnel cost is at 2.67 trillion naira. Donor funding and grants in the MTEF for the federal government's expenditure budget is put at 36.39 billion naira, and this is a topic of debate after the presentation of the MTEF. A lawmaker raises concern on the lack of donor coordination in Nigeria and the failure of the National Planning Commission to ensure an alignment of donor assistance with the national priorities.
The Senate should be concerned that the National Planning Commission is not effectively performing one of its stewardship roles of ensuring alignment of donor assistance with national priorities.
These are the part of the type of issues we are going to look at. How do we do the regulatory framework to know what the type of person who is the aid that is coming? What is the purpose?
No nation can grow from outside. Every nation must grow from within. So we must be careful how we collect aids before it turns to AIDS.
At the end of the debate, the Senate directs the National Planning Commission to put together a framework which will ensure development cooperation and aid effectiveness in Nigeria. Meanwhile, lawmakers debated the federal government's closure of land borders in the country. In August 2019, the federal government ordered the closure of all land borders to curb the smuggling of unauthorized goods into Nigeria. Neighboring countries are feeling the pinch because of the closure, prompting President Patrice Talon of Benin Republic to meet with President Buhari during the 7th Tokyo International Conference for Africa Development over the matter. Although lawmakers agree that there are benefits to the closure of the borders, some want the federal government to be more mindful of its effect on Nigerians, while some others want a permanent solution to the problem of smuggling and economic sabotage.
The most impactful of the benefits accruing to the country from this temporary border closure is the positive effect on the security situation in Nigeria. It has made it impossible for smugglers of small and light arms or light weapons to bring them into the country.
If you look around these borders, there are no government activities, there are no government presence, there are no lights, there are no roads, there are nothing. So these people have no forms of livelihood. And the little livelihood they have, whether they are growing tomatoes, they're trying to export it or whatnot, then all of a sudden now we just have this closure of border and they have no recourse to what to do. I mean, yes, you close for 28 days and what happens? You open the border and then everybody goes back to work, when you have not really given people the alternatives of what to consider.
The obverse side of this, as opposed to what Senator Alero has said, that the rice mills are working, we are getting from the reports in the newspapers every day that on the contrary, prices have gone up. It may be a temporary state for our people to suffer temporarily. And I also join my colleagues who have also asked the question, what do we do with this time that we now have the borders closed?
Yes, I'm aware, I agree, that within that short time of closure, our daily consumption has dropped, which, of course, everybody knows that we do not consume the number of liters that we banded every day that this is our consumption. That has reduced by about 11 million or so. A lot of other things has followed. Is this illegal smuggling of rice, of other products? It has reduced. Indeed, in the area of security, particularly up north and down south, it has removed this proliferation of all of these arms, not even just small arms. It has reduced. But that will not mean that great number of Nigerians that are those that are not of means, majority of them, they are affected by this closure.
In order to safeguard the inflow of the economy that comes from the legal borders, in quotes, vis-a-vis the security, the territorial integrity of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, weighed in two sides. We will abandon the country and go for the economy. Is that the thinking of an average Nigerian? I think, contrary to that, the thinking of an average Nigerian is that secure my country, let me live peacefully. Ensure legal trading so that I can legally exist within the country. And I think what the government is trying to do, from the feelers I have, is that we can no more condone a situation where our borders remain open to all sorts of things, and we are unable to physically come out with policy that can redirect the economy of this country. So in order now to make reforms, let us first of all close the borders. Let us call those charged with the responsibility of administering these borders to tell us what we can do to take care of both the illegal and the legal borders, so that our country will be seen to be promoting free trade, but legal trading across borders.
The Senate consequently resolved to ask the Ministers of Foreign Affairs and Interior to increase diplomatic outreach to the governments of Nigeria's border countries to ensure urgent steps to stop their countries from being used as smuggling base to illegal importation of unwanted goods to Nigeria.